So who am I and why am I teaching this class? So a lot of you probably know me as the director for cybersecurity for Sodexo, and you're thinking, why does the cybersecurity guy talking about customer service? Really, this presentation is built off of my experience way before that. In addition to being director for cybersecurity, I'm also the president for the HTM Association of Ohio. And then when my other free time, I occasionally teach a course for the College of Biomedical Equipment Technology. Before all of that, I spent 10 years as an in-house biomed, 5 years as a working supervisor with assigned PMs in departments, and a year as a manager before Sodexo came and stole me away. So most of it is from this 16 years of experience, going in and out of every single patient department you can think of, going into literally thousands and probably maybe even tens of thousands of patients' rooms across a big 14 hospital campus. So trying to take some of those lessons learned, because as you know, a lot of people who come into our industry are very tech savvy, maybe not so good at the social stuff. So before I get started, come on in. Yeah. No, come on in. Yes, good example. We get very nervous when we go into situations we don't expect. And hospital environments present a lot of situations you would never thought you would walk into. Is anybody familiar with the term the ninja biomed? Okay, so the ninja biomed is the guy who, or girl, they sneak in, they do their work, they sneak out, try not to be seen, and if they're seen, they fight or they argue. That's the ninja biomed. That is not the kind of person we want out taking care of our equipment. Those are the sort of folks who, for lack of a better term, sometimes give us a bad rep. So we're going to talk about some things we can prepare our staff for as they come in and to become new employees within our hospital environment. So today we're going to talk about starting with some basics, how to present yourself, how do we sympathize with our customers, a lot about what their problem is, how to own it, how to understand it. This one's really hard for some folks, keeping them informed with following up. Going into the patient room can be really scary. So what's some things we need to know before we go into those patient rooms? And then finally, what do we do when we get an angry customer, an angry physician, nurse staff? This is a tricky one. So right off the bat, like this seems a simple one. How do we present ourselves? Especially with new hires who maybe have never worn scrubs for the first time. Maybe they're really uncertain about what they're doing, where they should be going. That first impression, as you've probably heard, is very important. It also sets the expectation for that customer interaction. So when you go into the nursing staff and you look like this guy, it sets that expectation. You don't know what you're doing, you're uncertain. Now they're not certain if they called the right person. They're not certain if you can help them, or if they, especially if it's something life support. Hey, is this person really going to help me with my ventilator that's currently on a patient? And this person, we probably all worked with somebody like this. The frustration, they're frustrated immediately for whatever reason. Maybe they had a bad day, maybe they spilled their coffee before. So they go into that customer interaction showing that frustration immediately. And then this guy, the angry person, we've probably worked with someone, I worked with someone like this for about 10 years. So like, how do we talk to our staff about, even if we're really angry at what has happened, if they've called you for the same thing, for the same user error 3 times this week, or it's been broken since 8 a.m. and now it's 4 o'clock and you're trying to go home to beat traffic and they call you, even if you have a legitimate reason to be angry or be frustrated, that we have to understand how we present ourselves to the customer. So don't be that guy. So what I tell people, again, this is a lot easier said than done. The simple stuff with how you compose yourself, with sometimes smiling is hard for people. So even just a neutral face, eye contact goes a long way, proper body posture, just being open to whatever interaction is going to happen. This is kind of a fun one I like to throw in here. Some people get really uncertain what to do with their hands, and they move around, and they're trying to figure out, do I put it in my pocket? So here's some just quick recommendations of just how to be casual. Luckily, I've got a clicker here, or else I would be this person. Bring something with you. This helps you take notes. This helps you, if it's a part you think you might need, something to hold so you feel a little bit more confident being in the space. Maybe you bring a giant sign that says, "I love nurses." This one's a little less practical, but it'll win you some brownie points. And then once you're in that customer interaction, how do you sympathize with your customers? And this one is probably the most important, and I'll say that a lot because they're all really important. But they called you because they have a problem. There is something that's preventing them from treating their patient, and they need your help. And it doesn't matter how that happened. It really doesn't. So you know what they say about assuming. So don't assume you know what the problem is, because then you miss really critical details. So that's one thing I tell them is, make sure you are understanding their problem first. You're giving them an opportunity to speak through whatever's happening, so you don't miss critical details that might help you fix the equipment better or faster. And even when you believe it's a user error, and this will happen a lot, even when you know it's a user error, you know it's their fault, they still need your help. Like, that's why they called you, because they don't know what to do. And it might be really easy or really simple for you, but they've got all of this stuff to worry about. So that's where we have to put it back into focus. And in my opinion, I love it when it's this kind of stuff, because then I'm in and out quick. I get a 5-minute call and I feel like the hero, and everyone's like, "Thanks for helping me." Like, for me, these are my favorite kind of calls, because it's quick and easy. But just kind of reminding your staff that it doesn't matter how the problem happened, or even if there's not actually a problem, if they think it's preventing this patient care, you still need to help them. So no judgment. That's the most important thing, no matter how it came about. The judgment-free zone. This is just a good life rule in general, FYI, because patient care is really hard. They might have a lot of patients because another nurse called off and they've got extra patient care they're providing. They might have had something really significant happen to them in their personal life. Maybe they're having marital troubles. Maybe they're having issues with their kids' school, and that stress pours over into their work environment. So making sure we kind of can empathize, and we don't know what they're going through. We don't know what's happening to them that might be causing them to potentially have a user error. They missed something. So kind of having that sympathy for their situation, and knowing that first one, they called you because they have a problem. And then once we're there and we trying to figure out what the problem is, I love training my staff on how we can ask clarifying questions about the problem. Bringing it back to the equipment. This is really good just for troubleshooting. It's good for connecting with the staff and for troubleshooting to help us know what to fix. Because if we ask them for things like walking us through what had happened, I'll use the example here of if there's a patient monitor and they call you, the screen is blank. Well, that can mean a lot of things. So I like to ask clarifying questions. Is the entire screen blank, or just part of the screen? Was the screen ever on, or was it always off when you came into the room? Like these kind of questions that help you get to a quicker resolution. Repeat back the information and take notes. Sometimes it's easy if it's something like the screen is blank. Sometimes it's a specific error code they saw that you want to write down so you can look up later. So taking notes is important. And then walking your staff through scenarios like this to kind of coach them up on how to do it. So
It also helps if you don't know how to use equipment yourself.
so that's what I was going to get to next. No, that is a great input, because if you do this long enough, you're going to get called into a room to fix something you don't even know what it is. You might not know how to turn it on. Maybe you know what it's called, but you've never worked on it before. So that is a really great clarifying question of, walk me through what you were doing when this happened, and then you can get some context of, oh, there's the power button. Even simple things like that. It gives you a little bit more information, so you can sort of, what we would go to in the next step is own that problem. That's really helpful for us, because we run into a lot of situations like that where you can't know everything. There's just too much equipment. The diversity of equipment is too large. So when we need to figure out how to get to this step of owning that problem, because for us, we need to instill confidence in our ability to do that job, whether we know how to do it or not, because oftentimes we run into those situations where, again, we don't know how to fix this, but making sure we impart on our technicians that they don't have to have all the answers, but they should know their resources. So you can instill that confidence in your nurse by the way you interact with them. So instead of saying, I don't know how to fix that, sorry, something like, hey, you know, my coworker is a lot more better trained on this than I am. Or, hey, I'm gonna grab my supervisor. He's been doing this for a little longer than I have. Or, you know, we've got the manual down the shop. I'm gonna go grab the manual real quick, just so I can make sure I get this right. You know, like how we talk through that instills that confidence in our ability that we are gonna take care of their problems. Because at this stage, what the nurse wants, they want two things. One, they wanna know when they're gonna have their equipment back, and they wanna know what to tell their boss. That's a lot of times what's most important to them. They wanna know what to tell up the chain on this equipment being down. And if you don't have any answers for them, then they're gonna be getting those questions from their boss. What's going on in room 1? It's been down all week, right? We need to set that expectation, because this is your problem now. That is what we try to teach our technicians is, this is now your problem, whether you fix it or not. You own the problem and you own the resolution. And sometimes that's getting your coworker to help. Sometimes it's calling in a service. Sometimes it's sending it out for repair. Whatever that is, it's still our problem to own. So that's what I try to instill in our techs. And then keep your customers informed throughout the process. This is another one. It's easier said than done sometimes for certain people. Again, they want to know what to tell their leadership, what to expect in terms of when they can have that equipment for patient care. So, are you taking the device? If you have to say, if we use that example on the patient monitor, maybe it's an easy fix and the power plug is pulled out the back, or maybe the screen went bad. So if we have to take the device, you need to let that staff know, and then you need to know if you have a spare to give them, okay? And if that spare is a like-for-like replacement. In this example, he's given them an MX450, but what if he took out an MX700, and now that MX450 has one less physiological parameter waveform it can show? Or maybe it doesn't have cardiac output, or something like that. Let them know if it's like for like, then they're good. But if there's anything that is going to change the way, potentially change the way the clinician gives care, they need to communicate that. Like, hey, this is pretty close, the screen's smaller, but it's not, doesn't have the cardiac output, for instance. Then they can really have some more valuable information on what patient they put in that room. So, and then if it's a quick fix, let them know what you did. You know, check the power cord next time. It was pulled out a little bit on the back, so you don't have to call me. A lot of times nurses appreciate this, because then they don't have to, because then they feel silly sometimes if it's something they should have checked and they didn't check, or sometimes it just gets it up and running faster. And then are you ordering parts? This is an important one. If it's going to be down, did you have to order parts? Did you order parts overnight, or did you order them ground shipping? Because if you order them ground shipping and they call you in 2 days asking, where's my equipment? Like, oh, I forgot to tell you, it's ground shipping. It's not going to be here till next week. You have to set that expectation for them up front. And hopefully you've communicated how important this device is so you know what sort of shipping you should get. But again, it's like keeping them informed throughout the process and kind of training your staff that these are expectations of the role. And then following up, close the loop. Is it through an email or some way that's documented for a COIA? Sometimes that's important. The closing the loop with where you're at in the process, and when the process is complete, let the customer know, okay? Is the repair done? What was the solution? You don't have to give them every technical detail of what you calibrated. It's more, hey, I got the equipment back from repair. I put it in whatever room. If you return the equipment, where is it now? This is an important one because I see a lot of staff where like we put it in the clean utility, but I didn't let anybody know where I put it. And now the nurse is calling me 4 hours later, where's my equipment? So it's simple stuff. Do not be in the ninja biomed, sneaking in, dropping the equipment off, sneak back out. Things that seem like pretty obvious, but sometimes these are things that folks don't think about until they've been called out on it. Till it's happened and it's impaired patient care or a nurse, and they're now calling the leader, where's my device, right? All right, so this one is hard to prepare people for because there's a lot of different environments, surgery suites, procedure suites, trauma areas, ICUs. They're all a little bit different. The patient interactions will be different. The patient's awake versus patients sleeping. So these are things I tell my staff they should look for even before they enter a room. First thing first, when in doubt, especially if the door is closed, check with the nurse. Usually, well, sometimes you'll see signs outside the door that will tell you very interesting clues on should you go in the room or not. I've seen signs like patient is sleeping, do not enter the room, or patient's a light sleeper, or I'm trying to think of some other examples, but so look for isolation signs. Like you're predicting my whole slideshow. But there's handwritten signs that are pertinent to kind of what's going on right now. And then there's very important signs that are for your safety and the patient's safety, like what sort of PPE do I have to put on before I go in this room? And that's to protect me and to protect the patient. Do I need to put on a mask and gloves? Do I need to put on, is it an airlit drop isolation? Or the droplet isolation, and I need an N95 mask, but maybe I've got a beard and I'm not certified to wear one. So like knowing these sort of things, I've had to go into rooms where it was bed bugs. What do I put on to not get bed bugs? And there's a lot of stuff. So being prepared for how do we know what these signs mean, are we comfortable going into that space? Because there are times where, based off of what the problem was called in, and if that room's got bed bugs, I'm like, yeah, call me when the patient's discharged, we'll look at it then. But having that context is important. Sometimes it's bad enough you do have to go in those rooms, no matter what the isolation is. I always tell people, if the door is closed and you do have to go in, make sure you knock. You don't want to walk in on whatever might be happening in there. I've walked in on some weird stuff. So knock first, introduce yourself. So I always would say, I would knock, I say, hello, my name's Ryan. I'm with Biomed, and they're not gonna know what Biomed means. So then you follow up with, I'm just here to check out the equipment. So establish right away who you are, who you're with, and that you're non-clinical. That non-clinical piece is super important because usually what the patient, when they see someone coming in their room, they're hoping it's a clinician to give them medicine, to help them to the bathroom, to tell them when they're going to get discharged. That's their hope. So establish right away. Sorry, I'm not that guy. I just got to check on this monitor over here. And they're still going to ask a ton of questions. Even after you say, I'm not a clinician, I'm just work on this IV pump here, see if it's due for PM. They're still going to ask you to help them with stuff. So you have to know what that line is. And I don't have a slide for this, but I should have a whole slide on this. Where is the line on what we can and can't help that patient with? Because there's a lot of reasonable stuff we can help them with. I've gone into rooms and it's a person in there saying, I'm trying to call my son, but I can't reach the phone. Would you be able to move it closer to me? Sure, yeah, I can do that. Or hey, that sun's coming in real bright. Can you dim the blinds? Or I can't get the TV to turn down. Things like that are like more of a common courtesy. There's no impact on patient care. It's more of a human-to-human interaction. Let's help them. But if it's anything that involves touching the patient, which I've had that, where it's like, hey, I'm really uncomfortable in this position. Can you help me sit up? Or I have had a lot of patients ask me, can you help me to the restroom? Or this SpO2 probe's really uncomfortable on this hand. Can you switch it to that hand? Those are things not our place, right? So making that very clear. Touching the patient, not our place. It is, so that's how we follow up with that. It's like, I'm sorry, I'm not a clinical staff member. Let me go get your nurse or the nurse assistant who I think can help you with that. And I have actually helped a nurse adjust a patient in the bed, but the nurse led that interaction, right? She just needed a little muscle to slide them up. Okay, that's kind of more of a comfort zone thing for you. If you're not comfortable, don't do it, but always let the clinical staff lead with those sort of things. Because I know personally, a veteran technician, biomed for 20 years, he was called to a patient room because the telebox was acting up. Goes in there and he can see, yeah, the waveform's all weird. So he's like, where he's at central station, he can see the waveform's weird. So he goes into the room and he was gonna try to see what he can do to fix it. Well, where do they store telepacks on patients? A lot of times it's in the breast pocket of their gown. He wasn't thinking, and he asked the patient, can I check your tele? Hold it out, and this was a female patient, adjusted, disconnected, reconnected, got an established connection, slid it back in her pocket, went, okay, that fixed it. He went about his day. End of the day, he got a call from risk management there in the hospital. That patient called, when the nurse came in after that, talked to the nurse, there was a man in my room who was messing with my equipment, and when he was doing so, I felt really uncomfortable. So he got put on an administrative leave. He had the best intentions of helping that problem get fixed, but he went a little bit beyond the boundaries. He got put on administrative leave while they investigated it. So just as an FYI, teach our technicians where those boundaries are, because we don't want them, even though they're well-intentioned, to do something that might jeopardize their job. So just
Giving water or ice to be
and that is a really great input, because I've had that happen where you go in a room and there is a water jug in the room and they're like, hey, same thing with the phone. I'm really thirsty. Can you bring the water from the other side of the room? So knowing like anything the patient is going to consume, it's a big no-no. Even I've had where there's their tray of food that got pushed to the other side of the room. Can you bring that to me? And innocently enough, you're like, yeah, it's right there. Sure, why not? But there are oftentimes very real reasons why that food or drink is taken away from them. So exactly. Let me check with your nurse. They don't always like to hear that, but yeah. Well, so and here's another interesting one on that. So I've had this a bunch of different times where you're, especially on pump month, you're going in and out of a bunch of rooms, and you just, as soon as you go in a room, you hear the patient groaning. They're in so much pain. Oh, this is terrible. I really need you to get my nurse, or I really need whatever. And you go get the nurse, and they're like, yeah, he's faking. He's he's just trying to get more pain meds. So they will try to trick you into doing things they want that maybe their nurse has already said no to. Yeah. So we just have to be really careful with what we do and don't do in the patient room. The last one here, de-escalating angry customers. So there's a lot of different reasons this can happen. Whether it's, a lot of times it's physicians, but usually there's something they're upset about, right? Whether it's the piece of equipment keeps breaking all day long, it's really frustrating. But usually it's the situation the customer's mad at. Yeah, try to look big and intimidating. Yeah. This is where I try to go back to that sympathizing and walking in that clinician's shoes, the person's shoes, which are what are they going through today that they're frustrated at. Very rarely is it me. I have had an instance where it was actually my fault and they were angry at me, but most of the time it's not. Usually there's something that's preventing them from delivering patient care. So like as an example, I did dialysis when I was a biomed. Those dialysis treatments, especially if they're going to like an ICU to do a treatment in an ICU, they're often 3 or 4 hour treatments. And if that machine breaks at hour 1, they have to get another machine and they have to complete that 3 or 4 hours. So if it's like their last patient of the day, that might mean they have to stay late, which might mean that they miss the pickup window for their kids, or they miss something important, right? It might not even be something work related. This is impacting their personal life, especially in like some of those procedural areas where they've got 4 patients they got to do today. Those patients took the day off from work. Their family member took the day off of work to come here. They don't want to send them home without getting their procedure. So, and if that first patient of the day has a problem, now everything gets backed up. So they might just be really frustrated, like, I got a date tonight. I got to get home 5 o'clock. I can get ready and, whatever it is, right? There's all sorts of examples on things in there outside of work that could be impacting their work. And then, on top of all the other stuff we've talked about, just the patient care is really hard. And if they're not able to provide the patient care they're used to, they might be upset. So, well, I probably should have clicked this one down. Yeah, they can't treat patients because it's down for whatever the reason is. They have these time commitments, whether it's patient related or outside of work. I see a lot of nurses, a lot of clinicians, they have family they want to get home to just like us. So some
pressure they get put on them a lot of times from family members watching their loved one.
Yes.
So they're getting that pressure, and so it needs someplace to go.
Right. So, and we walk into those environments too, where especially like areas like a trauma or ICU where the patient is asleep, but their family member is there and their family member is the one who's upset for whatever reason. It's not our place to decide should they or should not be upset, but we have to know how to interact with that, and we have to know that if that family member just got done yelling at the nurse, that nurse is probably having a bad day. Or maybe we just had an interaction where someone yelled at us and now we're going into that environment and we can't bring that frustration because in these situations, like the clinician doesn't want to hear that you have 4 other calls going on right now or that you've got all this other stuff happening. They got a piece of broken equipment they just want fixed and they want to know what to do about it. So for us, it is a lot of you know, being calm in this situation. Don't be the big grizzly bear and trying to intimidate back. But yeah, it is a lot of the things we talked about. How do you have empathy for them to sympathize for their situation, no matter how it came up? That being calm is sometimes much easier said than done when we have someone being angry at us, especially if we just had a bad day. Because just like we don't know what they've been going through, they don't know what we've been going through either. So just trying to remember this guy here, be calm, try to be understanding, try to sympathize, instill the confidence in the customer that you are going to own their problems. So that's some of the main goals with customer service in general, because again, our staff, they're going to walk into things that can be very scary that you don't experience anywhere else in life. And if you've not been into a surgery suite when somebody is open having surgery, like I've had an intern decide they no longer want to do biomed anymore after doing an internship and going into some of these spaces. It made them really uncomfortable, especially when they went into surgery. I've had instances where even after I have had a lot of patient care or patient customer experience, sometimes you walk into, especially in like a trauma area, something you are just not mentally prepared to experience. And you walk in that room and maybe you're just there to check out the IV pump and you see a patient that's in a state that is shocking to you. Freezing up or running away is not, like, we kind of have to coach them. Like, these are things that are going to happen and here's how we react. I've had moments where I've panicked, where I've gone into a room and there's a nice old lady in there, and there's just, she's had a potty accident pretty much everywhere. And as soon as I opened the door, she's asking me for help. And I was pretty young at this point. I froze. I'm like, I don't know what to do. I'm gonna get your nurse. And I ran away. And like literally, it's the first time kind of experiencing a situation like that. Knowing that's not my place, I should have knocked. I should have checked with the nurse. I should have done something before I went in there. But now that I was in there, I panicked, ran away. So I was better next time, but kind of teaching your staff that these are environments they are going to walk into. Sometimes it's expected and sometimes it's not. So how do we, some stuff you can't be prepared for, but just at least when you know it might happen, you're a little bit better prepared to respond like this. So the other piece of this is that we often, when we hire new staff, especially if they're out of school or if they're coming from a different work field, these are things that they don't know, they've never experienced. So there's a lot of coaching. So when I was a manager, pretty much every single person we hired, we had a similar talk track like this and practicing scenarios, and it was job shadowing. Hey, come watch me do this. And then next time, I'll watch you do it. Now you're more comfortable, because giving them that support of, hey, here's how he reacted in that situation, or the support of they're doing it for their first couple of times and you're behind them, giving them confidence. And if they don't know, you can step in and help correct it. It takes effort, you know. Sometimes we don't have that time to put into it, but it makes a big difference for their ability. So they're not just being afraid and they're sneaking in, sneaking out, hoping they don't get seen, hoping the patient doesn't want to chat with them. So that's sometimes that happens too. The patient just wants to talk. They're asking you all sorts of questions and it's hard to get out of the room. It's not always angry patients. Sometimes it's the really happy, chatty patients that are hard to deal with too. So knowing that this is something everyone in our community has to deal with, has to train new staff. The other thing I'm trying to do as part of the HTMA Ohio is I created a training video for this. So Today, I talked to you like you're teaching it. This video here is me talking through a lot of the same material. There's more animations, there's more gifts of things to keep their interest, but I talk through a lot of the same stuff to them. So instead of teaching you, it's 40 minutes of me teaching your student. So if you're not sure how to teach this to your own staff, or you don't have time, feel free to use this. It's a free resource. Reach out to me. I love chatting with people. I love talking about this topic. It's one I'm pretty passionate about.
So you be that chatty patient. Closer.
So
Can I go in this room?
I'll tell you, actually, the funny thing is, in my personal life, I'm fairly introverted. In my work life, I'm kind of the opposite. So, so if I'm the patient, I'm like, please just come and go. And
Unless it was biomed.
if it were biomed, like, hey, you interested in coming to the HTMA Ohio event?